Next tonight, a high street in Haringey says it's been decimated by the introduction of a low-traffic neighbourhood. 3 businesses on Middleton Road have already shut up shop since the controversial LTN was brought in last year. And many others say they'll be forced to leave in the next 18 months. Our political correspondent Simon Harris reports.
For drivers, they're the flower pots from hell, the wooden plant tubs which mark the boundaries of low-traffic neighbourhoods. Across London, LTNs have divided suburbia. At Bowes Park in North London, traders on Middleton Road fear it's becoming a ghost town. Aliv chairs the local Traders Association and runs a cafe where business, she says, has fallen by a half.
I've got no trade passing by. I've got no tradesmen or women coming in anymore. I just rely on the local people for the lunchtime.
Can you survive?
No, it's really difficult.
Tara's company sells furniture and clothes, but the LTN has forced her to shut up shop and move to another part of London.
It feels like it's dying a death. Shops are pulling out. People are considering pulling out. Obviously they're tied to leases, but they're re-looking at their leases and may not continue. You can't do business here anymore.
But Haringey Council thinks there are other reasons businesses are struggling.
Across the borough, the reality is that the cost of living crisis and the economic environment has had an impact across borough-wide.
The LTNs?
So in areas there is no LTN, and very far from the LTNs, they have also seen a downturn in trade.
Haringey's 3 LTNs generated almost £2 million in fines in 4 months. The council insists they're not about raising money, they're about improving the lives of people who live there. You live in the low-traffic neighbourhood. Is it quieter? Is it better?
No, people, they push the camera, they use it. Was before quiet as well.
At her health salon, Saffron's customers include cancer patients. She says the LTN is scaring them away.
My clients are very vulnerable, they have a lot of underlying issues and they come here for their treatments. Now, a lot of them can't. They're too scared to come around here. They're not sure. They're very confused. Can they turn left? Can they turn right?
We've had many patients getting fines because they don't know how to get in and out without getting a fine. I think we had an 86-year-old lady. She came in for her teeth. She was fined twice. Once coming and once going. She appealed, it was rejected.
The council says the LTNs are an experiment and might not be permanent, but the damage they're doing could be. Simon Harris, ITV News, Bowes Park.
Good evening. Ford was once the biggest employer in Essex, but today the car giant has announced plans to cut a fifth of its UK workforce, with the majority of those jobs being axed from its base in Basildon. 1,000 workers at the technical centre in Dunton will lose their jobs, casualties of the company's shift to a greener model. With unions warning today's news is just the start of a string of cuts in the sector. Simon Harris has our top story.
It's the headquarters of Ford in Britain and home to almost 3,500 workers. But the axe is about to fall on hundreds of jobs at Ford's Dunton site near Basildon in Essex. The car giant is shedding a fifth of its UK workforce, and the bulk of the redundancies will be here.
It's always a shock when you hear the announcement, but unfortunately it's something that we've been expecting, and I think this is the start of many more announcements like this in the automotive sector.
At Ford's £1 million laboratories.
For more than 50 years, Dunton has been at the cutting edge of car making. Hidden away from prying eyes, designers, scientists and engineers have undertaken research and development on new models. In recent years, Dunton has focused on the world-famous Transit van. Many of the engineers who'll lose their jobs work on the development of diesel engines, making sure they meet modern emissions standards. But with the switch to electric vehicles, those roles will no longer be needed.
Electric cars are much simpler in their mechanical makeup than a combustion engine car. They have far fewer moving parts and they are in many ways easier to develop. So that means they need a smaller workforce.
Ford has been an industrial powerhouse in East London and Essex for a century. For many years, the Dagenham plant was a huge employer. In its heyday, 40,000 people worked here. Today, it's down to 2,000. Basildon Council has set up a task force to help the Dunton employees losing their jobs.
Luckily, engineering jobs, these types of research jobs, high-tech STEM jobs are highly in demand. So hopefully, within the time frame we're talking about 3 years, these people will find new work and this centre will continue to thrive as well.
Stephen and Alan spent their careers at Dunton. Stephen worked on the Focus and Mondeo. Alan helped design the Ford Sierra.
How can you describe going to play school every day? You know, it was hectic sometimes absolute manic, but it was always professional and it was always enjoyable.
People say to me, what would be your dream job? And I say I did it. It was my dream job. It was a good place to work in, actually. It was terrific. Quite mad at times, but quite brilliant as well.
Ford says the economic climate and interest rates played a part in today's decision. But the car industry is also adapting to a green revolution. Simon Harris, ITV News, Dunton.
Good evening. Jeremy Corbyn will not be standing as a Labour MP at the next election. That's an order by the party's leader, Sir Keir Starmer, who says Labour has changed and they are not going back. The Islington North MP had been suspended as a Labour MP after an inquiry into the party found failures in its dealings with allegations of anti-Semitism during his leadership. The question now is, will Mr Corbyn stand as an MP under a different banner? Our political correspondent Simon Harris has more.
Jeremy Corbyn was in no mood to answer questions. He didn't know it, but his successor as Labour leader was about to deliver a crushing blow.
Jeremy Corbyn will not stand for Labour at the next general election as a Labour Party candidate.
Jeremy Bernard Corbyn, Labour Party.
Less than a year after he was re-elected as Islington North MP, an investigation into anti-Semitism in the Labour Party concluded there were serious failings in leadership under Mr Corbyn. But this was his response.
The numbers have been exaggerated, in my view.
That led to him losing the Labour whip, and now Sir Keir Starmer's ruling on his future.
It's not a question of what Keir is doing, it's what Jeremy himself has brought on himself from what he did in the past, what he did today. He only has himself to blame.
In November, I asked Mr Corbyn about his future as an MP.
Will you be Labour's candidate in Islington North at the next election?
I hope so. I hope that the party reinstates the whip to me, which in my view should never have been removed.
But he also refused to rule out fighting his North London seat as an independent candidate. At the last election, more than 34,000 people in Islington North voted for Jeremy Corbyn. The constituency is regarded as an ultra-safe Labour seat, but that might change if he stands as an independent. In his constituency, in Finsbury Park, it wasn't hard to find Corbyn fans.
I love Jeremy because he's a good guy.
Would you vote for him as an independent?
Absolutely, yeah.
Would you vote for him if he was an independent?
Yes, I would. Because he's done quite a lot for this Islington North.
Would you vote for Jeremy Corbyn if he stood as an independent?
100%. Nothing wrong with Jeremy Corbyn.
I'll be voting for Jeremy, and I'm sure he'll win.
Jeremy Corbyn isn't just a regular customer at Gat's Cafe, he's also a popular dish. The owner, Hussein, created it for him and named it after him.
The name is Jeremy Corbyn dish. It's vegetarian, special falafel for him. A lot of people, they love him, this meal. They come here, they said, give me 2 Jeremy Corbyn dish.
Sources close to Mr Corbyn say he now plans to speak directly to local Labour Party members before revealing his next move. Simon Harris, ITV News, Islington.
Simon's back with me now. He's not backing down, is he?
Absolutely no sign of compromise there, and we heard him dismiss the critics as the vocal minority. I don't think anyone's expecting Sadiq Khan to give ground at this point, but make no mistake, I think officials at City Hall are concerned about the backlash. And someone else has joined the fray tonight. Former Prime Minister, former Mayor of London, Boris Johnson, has released a full-throttle attack in a video message on Twitter in which he describes the ULEZ expansion as a mad lefty tax, both unreasonable and unnecessary because all cars will be greener and cleaner by 2030, and he accuses the mayor of trying to wanting to rake in money after bankrupting TfL. Mr Khan would point out that it was the pandemic that really did for TfL's finances.
Yeah, so the two sides really digging in, but Sadiq Khan looking lonelier on his side, perhaps. Simon, thank you. Good evening. This time last night, the Mayor was on the programme pushing back against his growing list of critics, calling them a vocal minority. Well, in the last few hours, some of them have decided they won't just use their voices, they'll try to use the law in the fight against Sadiq Khan's decision to expand the ULEZ zone to outer London. 4 London boroughs and Surrey have launched a judicial review into how the controversial decision was reached. Our political correspondent Simon Harris has the latest developments.
Sadiq Khan was re-elected in 2021 on a promise to expand the ultra-low emission zone. 5 months later, true to his word, the ULEZ embraced all roads inside the north and south circulars. But his attempt to extend the zone to all of Greater London has provoked a huge backlash. His critics claim he ignored the results of a public consultation. Baroness Teresa O'Neill is the Tory leader of Bexley Council, one of 4 outer London boroughs, along with Surrey, which today launched a High Court challenge.
I'm really hoping that the judge calls the mayor to order in the same way as actually everyone else is saying. You know, frankly, we had a mandate at the election last year in Bexley, so we've got a democratic support. We know that the consultation and what happened with that, everyone is saying to the mayor, this is not the right answer.
In another development, a Conservative peer urged the government to change the law to force the mayor to take into account the views of outer London boroughs. Lord Moylan, who advised Boris Johnson during his City Hall days, has tabled an amendment to the government's Levelling Up bill.
Well, my amendment applies not just to London, but to the whole of the country, in places where they've got elected mayors and regional government. And what it says is that if you want to introduce road charging schemes, then you should actually have the boroughs, the local authorities in your area, on side.
Sadiq Khan said he wasn't surprised a former advisor to Boris Johnson was trying to halt the ULEZ extension.
Boris Johnson had a report that showed more than 400 schools were in areas where the air was unlawful, and Johnson and Moylan did nothing about it. So I'm not surprised they want to delay action. But if they delay action, it means that we carry on with around 4,000 people dying prematurely because of air quality.
Sadiq Khan believes he has a compelling argument about the health of Londoners. But is it cutting through?
The mayor now faces growing cross-party opposition to his plans. This week, 4 Labour MPs in London publicly called on him to postpone the scheme because of the cost of living crisis.
And then there was this intervention from Boris Johnson himself.
And stop this mad lefty tax on people's lives and livelihoods.
Hera, who works for the climate change charity Possible, was unimpressed.
It sort of speaks to kind of this sort of culture war that he's trying to feed into, and I think there's an element of desperation there. You know, ULEZ is undeniably a good thing for all Londoners.
Sadiq Khan has described ULEZ opponents as a vocal minority, but it's a minority that seems to be getting louder.
Simon, then back to the judicial review. Just how big a development is that?
It's certainly a dramatic development. The 4 councils, Bexley, Bromley, Harrow and Hillingdon, along now with Surrey, have been waiting to hear from a senior barrister at Casey whether he thinks they have a case. Well, that legal advice has now come back and they've submitted their papers to the court. There's always the possibility that this might not go ahead. The judge could throw it out. We haven't heard from Sadiq Khan on this latest development, but it is possible, if it goes to a hearing, that it might force him to delay the introduction of the ULEZ planned for the end of August.
OK, Simon, thank you.